very excited to share with you the first ever podcast from Whisky Sounds Good. Episode 1 featuring Master Blender of Lochlea Distillery, Jill Boyd, friend and ex-colleague of mine. And Jill has very kindly given up some of her time to share her story going from William Grant's lab assistant to the current day Master Blender of Lochlea Distillery, the distillery that is actually the closest to the village that I grew up in here in Ayrshire. So without further ado, let's hear what Jill has to say about her journey into becoming an icon of whisky and master blender for Lochlea Distillery. Welcome to the first ever Whisky Sounds Good podcast.
I'm so sorry, I can't take you seriously.
You shouldn't, nobody should.
Very gently.
I'm here with a friend and an icon of whisky.
I don't know if they're going to be allowed to be swearing in this, so I'm going to try my best to behave.
So, Jill, when did we first meet? It was about 8-9 years ago?
Yeah, must be. In fact, it might even be longer than that. I think the last time we saw each other was 8-9 years ago, like in person.
Was it?
While we were both with William Grant, yeah.
So we met before?
Well, no, we were with William Grant, but I worked there for like 3 years, so right. I think it was right at the start. When new brand ambassadors used to come and swan around the distillery and go into like the little lab I worked in and poke around the cupboards, and I'm just like, would you get out my cupboard? I'm actually trying to do real work here. I can't just be having a good time and eating a steak.
What was your role at William Grant?
I was a lab assistant. So what I used to do was I looked after all the sexy whiskey. I looked after the wastewater. I looked after the barley checks. I know everyone's like, tell me more about wastewater. You don't want to know. But I used to do the sampling to make sure that the distillery was running how it was supposed to. I'd let anyone who was higher up than me, which to be honest was everyone at the time, know if there was a weird result, so that maybe there was like a condenser that wasn't running as efficiently, and I would be able to find that out from the results from tests that I would do, and I'd let people know so that the distillery ran efficiently, it ran well, so that the environmental impact of the distillery was kept to a minimal. And yeah, that was me. And eventually, and the reason that I ended up doing blending and where I am now was because they needed someone to run the nosing panel. And let me tell you, I used to have to beg people to come and like do their nosing every day. And we had about 80 people who were all qualified, had done all their tests to nose. But I loved it. And I was in the lab every day, and my job was to send the emails to harass people to come up and actually fill in their information. I used to need about 10 to 20 people to just sign off the spirit. I loved it. And then it turned out I was good at it as well. I loved the nosing. We didn't do so much the tasting of new make, but everything else, it was just great fun. So yeah.
And at that point, did you have a goal to get into making whiskey?
No. I didn't have a goal to be in whiskey, full stop.
At all?
I studied forensic biology at uni. I wanted to be in CSI, basically. Not quite as naively as that, but I wanted to do like genetic analysis. I wanted to do like entomology. I wanted to be like crime scene, all those kind of cool things. And then when I finished uni, I moved back home with my parents to Speyside, which is obviously the heart of like whiskey. I never even thought whiskey would be an option.
To be fair, you've went to the route because whiskey can be the catalyst for crime scenes.
Yeah, I've got a few friends from uni who are like, they work like with the Scottish police and things, and they genuinely do like the incredible good work. And sometimes I joke that like I send the people their way eventually, and they're like, but yeah, a little bit. Drink responsibly.
Not the products we're talking about. You know, we're not talking about. Well, we won't mention any.
Let's keep this clean.
The journey that you've been on has been pretty incredible. You told me about it a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I did. We kind of accidentally overshot the recording of this, but
give us the quick overview of William Grant, Lochlea.
So William Grant started at the very bottom with like zero whiskey knowledge other than I liked it, and I had a rough idea how it was made. Grants were incredible for me. They really like I think they saw how enthusiastic I was, and they really funneled me into like learning development. They put me through my exams to make sure that I like understood all the process to making whiskey, and for that I'll always be eternally grateful. There's so many people who saw potential in me to do well, and yeah, it's just amazing. Like to think that like over a decade now I'm where I am, being able to like blend and kind of do that kind of stuff is just, if you told me that, I'd be like, yeah, very good.
Yeah.
But I was encouraged and really pushed to kind of develop. I ended up, as I said, running the sensory panel, the nosing panel, sending all the details off. I loved it. And I applied for a job as a blender at Compass Box, who were based in London. So I was going from Elgin, centre of the Murray universe, to London, which might actually be the centre of the actual universe. And oh God, it was mad. Moved there, was with Compass Box as a blender for 7 years, and then moved from there to a completely, which Compass Box is small and boutique. I moved from that to Halewood, which was massive and like basically the exact opposite. Big volumes, younger whiskey. I got to look after 3 distilleries. So they had a Scottish, an English and a Welsh. And I got to visit there, look after them, move their blends forward. But then Lochlea came out and were looking for a new blender. And yeah, it was just, there was no contest. It's beautiful products. I get to be in Ayrshire, which is where my dad grew up, back in Glasgow, where I went to uni. Loved it. It was a great opportunity, and I couldn't really pass. And I love the team. So yeah.
Right. So your dad's from Ayrshire?
My dad is, I will get this wrong, I believe he is from Irvine, but he may be from Girvan. But he grew up in this area. So I spent a lot of time when I was younger in Ayr and like Burns country, really. Yeah. Up until we moved to Speyside when I was 7.
Irvine is where my sister was born. So I grew up about 20, not even, but 10, 15 miles from here.
Yeah, you said. And I'm like, I did not know that. I always thought you were a Glaswegian lad.
So, well, most of my family's from Glasgow, but the family moved to Fenwick.
Yes.
And grew up there. But this is now the closest distillery to where I grew up.
Yeah.
And so it's quite fitting that I'm kicking off this podcast with you, a friend and master distiller, master blender for the distillery that's kind of where I'm from.
It's quite sweet, isn't it?
You are celebrating Lochlea 6.
Yeah, we were 6 at the end of last year. So every year on Burns night or thereabouts, it was the Friday, so the 24th this year, we released our 6-year-old expression, partly because people were going to have Burns nights. They probably don't want to be running to get a bottle of Lochlea the morning of their whiskey, kind of like extravaganza. So yeah, we released it on the 24th of January, and that's our oldest expression to date, 6 years old.
Brilliant. And the tie of the distillery and the brand to Burns, can you tell us a little bit about that?
So Lochlea is the farm that Burns farmed, I suppose. Always feels weird to be like, it's the farm he farmed, but it's the land that he farmed when he was a younger man, and he lived here for, I'm going to get this wrong, Neil, the owner, is like on this, but like he knows like the dates. Like every now and then I will like say something and he's like, what year was that? And I was like, I don't know. But as a younger man, Burns was here, he farmed this land. These are the fields that he ploughed, that he grew his crops.
That's absolutely mind-blowing. I say that because...
Well, he's Scotland's national poet, isn't he?
And we celebrate, Burns Night, for anyone that's not familiar, it's kind of like our St. Patrick's Day in a way.
Yeah.
It's celebrated around the world. We celebrate our whiskey, we celebrate eating haggis.
And like, would we say it's our St. Patrick's Day when we do have St. Andrew's Day?
Well, the reason I say that is because we don't celebrate St. Andrews.
No, we don't, but we do celebrate Burns.
So there's really no event on St. Andrew's Day, which is November 30th.
Yeah, that's true. But people make a do for Burns, so you're totally right. So
January 25th, we do our Burns Night, and it's amazing. Like, honestly, I've done so many Burns Nights, and yes, it's a really cool kind of cultural moment for Scottish people, especially Scottish people abroad, celebrating, our national drink.
Yep.
But sitting here listening to you say that Burns ploughed these fields is insane.
I don't know when. My dad was really into Burns when I was younger, and he used to read me a lot of Burns poetry, and I always remember like To a Moose. And there's a bit about when he's like ploughing one of the fields and he overturns like a mouse's nest, and then he writes this poem being like, he's so sorry that like life is so fragile and his chaos that he is doing to create like his life and his farm has destroyed the kind of like nest and the life of this little mouse. It's very beautiful, and it's one of my favorites when I was younger. But it's like, I'm not sure when he wrote that, but it is about the fields that he ploughed, and that is where we are. So yeah.
So cool. Let's talk whiskey.
Okay. The crux of the matter.
The style, the house style of Lochlea. What is the sort of the I don't want to say ethos of the brand. It sounds a little bit cheesy, but you know, what is Lochlea about? I mentioned earlier to Neil, your owner, and founder, if you guys were like really into the idea of lowland whiskey, and he gave me the answer that I really enjoyed, because I'm not a big fan of the regions, and so you're not really championing lowland per se, right?
We're championing where we are, but not so much that we are lowland. We happen to be in the lowlands, but wherever we be, that's where we'd be championing. Championing.
It's a tough one to say that.
Championing. Oh God.
Promoting.
Promoting. That's the area that we'd be saying, this is where we are. So Lochlea, it's a single estate whiskey, essentially, as much as you can have. We are growing our barley here. We're harvesting it. We dry it. We send it out to be malted. Comes back. Like literally, above you is our office for running the whole distillery, and through that wall is our still. Through that wall is our still. Through that wall is fermenter number 6. And you're just like, everything is on site. We're a tiny operation. We make about just shy of 200,000 litres of alcohol a year. That's
small,
nothing. That's
small.
A drop in the ocean. And I laugh because we're so close to Girvan Distillery. And I think what we make in a year, I mean, Girvan must be making that in a day, like a slow day. And I just think it's little. And this is not a judgment on bigger distilleries. Everyone makes the most beautiful spirit they can, but we're small. We're considered, I don't want to say we're holistic because that sounds really like wanky, but I think there's a lot of tie to the land and a lot of tie to Neil grows this barley. The whole family, like Neil and Jen, the owners, the founders, my bosses essentially, are so involved in every single part of this. It's their design. Everything you see in this room, these bottle designs, this beautiful creation that they've put together is Jen's vision for what our distillery should be, what it should look like. What we make as a whiskey is their vision of what they want their whiskey to be. Heavy on the cereal to kind of take note of the beautiful barley we grow, but it's got this lovely kind of compotty, kind of soft, kind of fruity note in the background. I think it's a little bit, but I'm stuck on rhubarb at the moment, but it's a little bit stewed rhubarb, kind of white fruits, peaches, a little bit of plum. It's gorgeous.
Sounds very tasty.
So we are 100% for every single one of our releases. Every single one. It's all the barley from the fields.
Cool. And it's non-peated.
Non-peated, yep.
And I know that you are a fan of peated whiskey.
We are. Well, I am for sure, yeah. We are also, I think, as a crew, quite a fan of a peated whiskey, but...
If you were to create a whiskey that had your personality, right?
Be undrinkable. You know it's not wrong. I feel just like, rah!
I was thinking about this question on the way here, and the word that sprung to mind was funky.
Oh God, I was like, the word that I was worried you were going to say was like manic, and then it'd be like, yeah, okay, funky.
Like, look at your sweater, I love it.
Oh, thank you.
But it fits the vibe of Jill Boyd.
Yeah.
And you know, you have a very kind of warm and fun personality.
Oh, thank you.
And it's reflected in your clothing today. But how would that manifest itself in a whiskey that was free of any constraints of Lochlea or any other brand that you've worked for?
I put together, I'm always quite biased, I put together a whiskey that is like my favourite whiskey in the world when it was a Compass box. And it's wee kind of code name before it actually got an actual name, because it used to take, sometimes you'd get a name immediately and sometimes it would take months to come up with like a name for a whiskey that you put together. And I used to call it First Kiss After Midnight, because it's like a smoky nightclub romance. And my friend Aidan once was on the phone and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "That's like a good description, but also mental." And I was like, that's, I think, when I put whiskies together, what I want is something that's like all at once delicious and like familiar, but with like a wee twist that's a bit odd. And it's like lightly sherried, bit smoky, wee bit of funk in the background. And that's kind of what I love. And I was just like, I wanted to create a whiskey for me that was sweet and had those top notes of like crushed cherry blossom and like really soft kind of red fruits, but also has this big smoky backbone that kind of lets you kind of drive through the flavour. I love peat that's not traditional. Like, not everything has to be a smoke bomb. Not everything has to be like eating a lump of coal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be subtle and warming, and that's kind of what I want.
It's actually more enjoyable that way for me because it allows other flavours to come out. Peat is such a dominant flavour that if there's too much of it, you just kind of left thinking that was a bit one-dimensional.
I love like an Octomore. An Octomore was my gateway back into peat after I was like, obviously of legal age, when I swigged a big haup of either a Lafroig or a Lagavulin before going out to the clubs in Elgin. And the two very classic clubs.
On this planet swigs Lagavulin before they go to the clubs.
Well, someone was like, have a swig of this. And it was a Lafroig or a Lagavulin. I just remember knocking it back. My nose was on fire. My eyes were like, it was smoke and nightmares. I'd never drunk whiskey before.
There's like an idea for a release.
Smoke and nightmares?
Smoke and nightmares.
But I was like, I've been drinking passion fruit Bacardi Breezers all night. Yeah. It was like the most switch up kind of flavour you could ever possibly had. And I was like, I'll never drink peated whiskey again. And it wasn't until I had an Octomore, I did a tutored Octomore tasting, and I was like, oh God, it's delicious. So peated whiskey for me was something I didn't touch for like 8-9 years. I just wasn't interested. I was very much into Scotland's other national beverage, Iron Brew, for the win.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else. A little tonic wine.
Oh, I've only ever had it once, and it was at a wedding last year. A pal's wedding, June last year, and I was like coerced into trying Buckfast for the first time. See, when it comes to drinking whiskey, I know this is probably a question you've got for me later. When it comes to drinking whiskey, do what you want. Ice, water, maybe not Coke. Maybe don't drown your whiskey. Still know that you've got whiskey in your glass when you're drinking it. But like, I love whiskey cocktails and I love it neat. I love drinking whiskey highballs where it's whiskey and Calvados. Oh my God, change your life, by the way. Like the perfect summer drink. I say drink whiskey any way you want. Iron Brew, from the fridge, out the can, out the bottle. No ice. No putting it in a cocktail. Never put Iron Brew in whiskey. Like, why would you sully something so perfect? And that is where I draw the line. I'm like, do what you want with whiskey. Leave Iron Brew to the purists.
We are so passionate about Iron Brew, aren't we?
It's delicious. Iron Brew and a bacon roll will cure any hangover.
I like an ice cube in my whiskey, I'm not going to lie. And that's partly through living in warm places like Texas, but it's also just through experimentation and realising that more often than not, I don't really like drinking room temperature, warm-ish spirits.
That's fair.
Call me crazy. And I'm not always worried about having a straw or a pipette to add some water.
A pipette? Pipette?
Pipette? Okay, pipette.
Pipette, I like that. I'm going to start calling them that. Pipette made me think
it sounds like there's a piper coming in to like add 2 drops. That would be cool, wouldn't it? That's an idea, actually.
There you go. Bandit. See? Pipette.
But just throw an ice cube in. And it doesn't need to be like a big rock, just the cheap little ice you get anywhere, any bar.
Yeah, those massive ice cubes that basically take up a whole glass.
Too much.
I think they might be my husband's most hated thing in the entire world. When we go out, if we get cocktails, he's always like, I know that big ice melts slower, so it dilutes your drink less fast. But sometimes you take that ice cube out, and in a standard glass, if you've got 2 measures, like you're lucky, and it's the ice cube makes it look like a full drink. Putting an ice cube that big in just whiskey will dull all the flavours, and it kind of makes it harder to kind of enjoy the nose. All the delicate flavours kind of get like, they get coolied into themselves, so they don't get to be expressed. They're not something you can smell. A little bit of ice isn't going to kill anything. It's just going to make, like you said, who wants to drink like warmish whiskey? I do. I like a room temperature whiskey. I like a whiskey that you've held in your hand so it's warmed up very slightly and it gives those beautiful kind of like like smells, and you're like, oh God, you get like floral, and you get peat, and you get like grassy and cereal, and they all come out at different temperatures. But I also like drinking, like, if I've had a big day at work, I've been tasting loads of whiskey, I get laughed for it, but I'm like, I would like your coldest, most flavourless glass of white wine, because I don't want to really appreciate big flavours. And that's also nice in whiskey, especially things like peat. Maybe I wouldn't put ice cubes or cold water into, I don't know, something really delicate, like, what's the gentle spirit? The one highest up in the UK.
Dalwhinnie?
Yeah, Dalwhinnie 15 is so light. I think putting some cold with that would kind of take away from like the joy of how creamy and how sweet and delicate it is. But putting like a wee bit of like ice into a Lafroig dampens your bigger notes so that you can enjoy it kind of cold and kind of on a summery day.
Lafroig 10-year-old is still a big whiskey with an ice cube in it.
Oh man, it's a big whiskey. No matter what you do, you could hide that under a bushel and it would still be like, it's a foghorn.
Your name's Jill.
Jill.
But you did call yourself Bill for a while, didn't
God,
you?
yes.
Tell
Bill
me about
Joyed.
that. Yeah.
So basically, I get a lot of people finding me on Facebook, especially when I started working for Compass Box, because it's got such passionate fans. Fair enough. I think I'm still Bill Joyed on Facebook. I'm private now. Don't bother following me. I don't think I've posted anything in a decade. You also won't really find me doing anything on Instagram. I keep thinking, this is the year, I'll be better. And then I do nothing. But I take some pictures and then they stay on my phone. But yeah, Bill Joyed was because I was getting a lot of people, especially with Compass Box, who'd friend request me. And I'd be like, sure, like that's fine. But then they'd start messaging and they'd be like my pal. They'd be like, hey, but then they just, it's 7 o'clock on a Friday and I'm looking forward to winding down for the weekend. And they're like, I want to ask you whiskey questions. I didn't want to be asked. So I was just like, I wanted to disappear into the ether.
Separation.
Yeah, separation of church and state, as it was.
In a funny way, I did something similar with the Dave Paradise and Dave Allardyce. It wasn't intentional, but I left LinkedIn as David Allardyce.
Yes.
And pretty much every other social media that I used just became Dave Paradise.
You need almost like you need a private profile and your work profile, especially in whiskey, where if you're front facing, people are going to come. And I love getting asked questions, and I really want to talk to people about whiskey, but I also really want a Friday to watch Bridgerton and do absolutely nothing and not think about work.
You mean you don't just live and breathe whiskey 24/7?
No, sometimes I live and breathe Bridgerton as well, and I'm just like, so yeah.
What's your thoughts on women in whiskey?
Well, we're here, I suppose. Women in whiskey is, I completely understand why it's like such a big topic, because for a long time women weren't visible in whiskey, and it's mad because there are so many incredible women at the top of their game, but for a long time they weren't championed, they weren't visible. And now I look and I'm like, God, look at Kelsey McKechnie. Could she be the coolest woman in the world? Probably.
She's up there.
I can't think of anyone. Sometimes I think when I grow up, I'd like to be Kelsey, and then I think she's like a full decade younger than me.
Have you seen Rachel Barry's Instagram?
No, but she is so cool as well.
She's fun.
Her, there's Annabelle from Nickneen. There's, oh my God, let's talk about like the queen of whiskey at the moment. I think she's won like World Whiskey Blender. She's like the blender, Stephanie McLeod. Like, I don't think anyone is hitting it as hard as she is. She's just like, she's winning everything. She's doing everything. She's so elegant. She's cool as hell. And I'm just like, maybe I want to be you when I grow up. There's such like an amazing pack of women, like a community out there. And I was at what they called, the Pot Still Whiskey Girls Women in Whiskey Lunch, which I think was in March. And just getting to hang out with all these cool women who are in production and blending and marketing. And they're just awesome. But it's taken so long to kind of get to the point where someone doesn't come up to me at a whiskey show now and go, do you even like whiskey? Or what do you do? And the best answer when someone says, do you even like whiskey? Is I'm just like, no. And there's no coming back from that. It's so like disarming because they're like, why are you doing this if you don't like it? And I'm like, well, I actually love it. But you've come in and you've seen me and you've gone, well, you're obviously not going to be involved in like the production or the creation. I'll be like a side face who sells or something like that. So
I was going to ask you that. Has that evolution been pretty noticeable in terms of like people's interaction with you at whiskey shows and things like that?
What I love at whiskey shows is when I started 10, 12 years ago, you would see like a girl. Not every woman and not every boyfriend would be dragging their girlfriend to a whiskey show, but there'd be a lot of girls who would go to whiskey shows because their boyfriend would want to go, and essentially they were the designated driver. They'd try a couple of whiskeys, they'd say they didn't like it, that would kind of be their thing. Now I've seen like hen parties at whiskey shows now who are just possibly the most riotous things in the world, but they love whiskey, they want to learn. People ask me questions about all kinds of things. They're really interested. Sorry, that's my alarm going off, but like, ignore me.
Oh,
no, don't worry.
Is that the time?
It is 1:25.
We've got to go.
I've got a little bit of time. It's fine. But like, women are excited and interested and getting educated about whiskey in the same way men are.
Yeah.
Or men were encouraged to be, because it's like a badge of honour if you're a lad and you drink whiskey with your dad. But I don't think women have that same connection from our generation. But probably now, like, it's definitely seen as like equal opportunities drink for anyone.
Yeah.
If you're interested, you can drink it, and no one's going to judge if you're anything.
I would say that the split of our tastings would have been about 70 to 30%.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Quite consistently.
Yeah.
Very rarely would it be, 50-50 or more than that, but
30% even is great.
It certainly wasn't, there would be occasions where it might be a golf club or something like that, where it's a bit more male dominated.
Noticeably more boys at some, but I think it's great that, like, the Soho Whisky Club that I'm a member of, they don't do women in whiskey tastings, but there's such a drive to get women involved in the club. And I've seen over the years, like, the work that each successive manager has done in encouraging not just like your classic kind of businessman, but anyone to come and be interested. And there's definitely more women involved in tastings and going to the tastings now. And maybe that's as much to do with women being brand ambassadors and kind of like being in higher, more visual kind of roles.
I think so. It almost gives permission. People do look to other people for permission and influence. So it definitely plays a huge role.
Yeah. Seeing someone like you do something makes you think maybe I can do it too.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what I felt about, like, seeing a lot of kind of women, because I came to whiskey late, and seeing a lot of women already kind of like in higher positions made me think maybe I could do that too.
Yeah.
I never expected to be a blender. This is a total, like,
it's amazing.
At any point someone could pinch me, I could wake up and I'm like, they're cutting my barley corns and William Grant's, but at the same time it's amazing.
I remember seeing you announce that you were moving to Compass Box.
Oh God.
Which was, one of the most respected whiskey brands out there. Maybe not as well known as the big whiskey houses. It is a big whiskey house now, but it's not a recognisable household name the way that maybe Johnny Walker is, for
Absolutely.
example. But in the whiskey industry, and people that really enjoy whiskey, really well respected. What was one of the takeaways from, your favourite memories or moments in that role?
I mean, James Saxon, who's their master blender, in fact, I think director of whiskey, I will butcher his title, whatever he is, but getting to work with James was absolutely incredible. He is like just the most forward-thinking, visionary kind of blender in a way that I can't even really put into words. He just seems to know how things go, and he's so humble, and I'm going to brag for him because I think he's just the best, but like, getting to work with James and see him grow and like become the blender he is today, he's always been good, but now he's like honed it and he's incredible. That was amazing. Compass Box sent me all over the world, within reason, all over like the west side. I got to go to America so often, and like France, and kind of like visit places I'd never think that I would get to be involved with. Used to love, did you ever do the Cinderella cruises in Sweden?
I did it once on my first week on the job. Madness.
That is the most, oh my God, it was a baptism of fire. And do you know what? The run up to it, I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I'd go and I'd get sick because you're breathing the same recycled air for 4 days. You're not eating properly. You're never getting to sleep. You're basically drinking nothing but whiskey. you're probably having steak 3 times a day because all the other food has been eaten and there's like a half cooked bit of meat under a heat lamp and you're like, this is what I'm eating today.
For people that don't know what it is, it's a ferry that sails from Stockholm or somewhere in Sweden.
Stockholm into international waters and back.
And the car deck is a whiskey festival.
Yeah.
There's no cars, it's whiskey brands with their stands, and they're selling, we had a pallet of whiskey behind us.
People from Sweden would go and buy their whiskey for the year at these
because it was tax-free or whatever.
Yes, because we left international water, so it was duty-free.
Duty-free.
But you'd get sick. I used to carry like 10 face masks. Even now, there's always a face mask in my backpack because I assume that I'm going to have like grey skin, no energy. I'd finish up and people would be like, if you don't want to do it, I'll do it. And it's like, this is my baby. I loved it as soon as it was over. But during it, I was like, I think I might die. And
I remember we did it 4 days back to back and it was 2 sessions. So usually we do a whiskey festival.
Yeah.
You know, it's one night and then maybe
4 hours in an evening, 4 hours in a morning, I think it was.
Insanity. Like, doesn't make sense. It's a whiskey marathon. But nobody prepares you for it.
Yeah. And you just go. I saw David Stewart dancing at 4 o'clock in the morning on the nightclub dance floor, and he was still going. I was going to bed. Like, oh God, it was wild. You'd see people just having the best time of their lives, and I'm like, how are you doing this? I'm so tired. But off they'd go. They'd be having a great time.
Okay, I know we've both got to move.
Yes.
And for anyone that's watching that's wondering why we're not dramming,
yes,
there's no drams because we're both driving today.
We are.
So we are responsible.
we really enjoy it, but we are not able to do it today. But at some point, we'll let's get a pint and a dram. What is this smirk for? Right, what are you saying?
I'm trying to find my final
Your
question here. 2 questions.
Okay.
If you could share a dram with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Right.
Could be a family member, could be someone famous.
I work up in Scotland 2 to 3 weeks a month. My husband still lives in London, so I commute. I would really like somewhere beautiful and sunny to be having a wee dram with him, but that's quite cutesy, so I'm like, shove that to the side. I would really love a dram with Miriam Margolyes.
I don't know who that is.
She's Professor Sprout in Harry Potter. Look for Miriam Margolyes on, the Irish comedian with the big red sofa. He's so famous. Graham Norton. YouTube Miriam Margolyes on Graham Norton. Okay. She is filthy. She is so funny. She is like militant, insane. She's like, I'm old. She has said words that you're not allowed to say to everyone. And people are shocked by her. She's this mild-mannered little Australian lady with like a wee halo of grey hair, and then she opens her mouth. Her book, she's filthy. The things she has done, I'm like, Miriam, she would be the most entertaining person to spend like an evening with. I'd love to have like some girlfriends and Miriam Margolyes and just sit and have some whiskey. And she does drink it. I read an interview with her fairly recently. God knows what she was promoting. But I read an interview with her and she was just like, oh, I don't mind a Scotch whiskey. And I was like, yes, Miriam, one day this will happen. She was meant to be in Agatha all along. That's it. But then they wouldn't pay her enough. She was like, I want $1 million. And they're like, no. And she's like, oh, well. She just said no. She's amazing.
So which dram would you be drinking with Miriam?
Ooh, she's probably, I'd give her something beautiful like sewing, something really light and like easy drinking, because we're probably going to highball it if we're in Australia, because obviously she's going to fly me over to the sunshine so we can have a wee drink together. But my personal favourite, we're about to release our cask strength batch 3. That sounds like promotion, but it's not. This will come out, God knows when. It'll probably already be out, like the whiskey will be out by the time this is here, and it'll be on the internet forever. So it's right. Batch 3 cask strength won't be around forever because it's seasonal. We release it once a year, different recipe, but it's sherry and peat, and they're like my 2 favourite things together.
Brilliant. And when you say different recipe, different styles of barley?
No, same barley every time. So same barley from here, but different casks. Different maturation times, different ages.
Got it.
So this is the first whiskey from Lochlea that I've put together 100% myself. We did the 6-year-old, and I was very fortunate to get to put the final blend composition together. But the 6 casks that we used had already been picked. So my predecessor, John, and the team had selected 6 beautiful casks. I then got to work out the proportions and the percentages to make the 6-year-old. But with cask strength, I was like, they were like, the distillery's yours, pick what you want,
Amazing.
Put it together. And that was awesome. So yeah.
Can't wait to taste it.
You'll have to, because I don't even have a sample I could give you to take home. I'm so sorry.
Last question.
Last question.
Before we both head off for lunch.
I'm not going for lunch. I've actually
Where are you going?
I'm going to the dentist.
Oh, God.
But just for a checkup, not for an Iron Brew related situation. Not yet. Touch wood.
What was the moment that changed your view on whiskey? I suppose kind of got you into the enjoyment of it.
So back to Dalwhinnie 15. I worked for a bar called the Druty Cobbler in Elgin, and they did real ale, coffee, and whiskey. That was like their things. Then you were like, they were like, do you like beer? Do you like coffee? And I was like, I hate them. And they're like, oh, but do you like whiskey? And I was like, no, I hate whiskey as well. And they're like, you have to pick one. You have to like one so you can talk to customers about it. So I was like, right, I'll try a bit more whiskey. They arranged tastings. People would come in. We'd get brand ambassadors from all over the place. Even Glenfiddich would come in. And I was like, right, I will try these drams. And one day I will like something. Everyone keeps saying there is a whiskey for everyone. It's not like I didn't drink. I loved rum. I wasn't into Calvados at the time, but I did like those sticky kind of sweet kind of flavours. I loved port. And I remember having a Dalwhinnie 15 in a tasting. And it's not the most glowing response. I love Dalwhinnie 15 now, but at the time I tasted it and I thought, I don't hate this. And that sounds like such low praise. But at the time that was a revelation, because at the time I thought all whiskey was that burning sensation in my nose. And I just remember thinking, well, if I can think this is fine, I can try more of it. I've learned to like red wine. I can learn to like anything. Then there was a Balvenie Portwood 21. Oh God, juicy, sweet, just tasted perfect. And that was it. Had the Dalwhinnie, was like, maybe I could like whiskey. Had the Portwood, was like, oh no, I like whiskey. And then the true love of my life, and it won't come back, and I'm so sad, Glen Murray cider cask finish. Oh my God. Juicy, crisp. Tastes like you're kind of drinking scrumpy, but boozy. Really good. So yeah.
Love that. Yeah, I can relate to that. I remember having my first neat dram and thinking, I don't hate this.
And that feels like a huge step.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's so cool.
You're expecting the worst. And then from there it's like, oh, maybe I should try some more. And
especially because, do you know what's awful? When people are like our cask strength, they'll give that to someone who's never had a whiskey before. And realistically, if you've never had a whiskey before, you don't want a 60% dram. You've probably had like vodka with mixer, gin with tonic, rum with Coke. You've never drunk something that's 40% before. So people keep giving people 40%, 40%ers, not as a starter, but like after. So don't give someone a 60% dram. Give them something 40%, put a little water in it, temper it down. Beer's what, 5%? 3 to 5? I mean, Tennent's is 3.5. Yeah, 3 to the moon. But beer is low alcohol. I drink cider. I'm not a beer drinker. But they're all kind of lower ABV. Whiskey's a huge shock to the palate, just from the sheer amount of alcohol there is. So start light, mix it, have it in a cocktail. That's a great way to kind of get used to the flavour without the burn of the booze. But yeah,
absolutely. Jill, this has been amazing.
I'm a miracle that like I happened to like whatever it was that you were doing on Instagram the other day, and I'm like, oh, look at Dave. That's so cute. And then you're like, let's get a pint. And now here we are, not getting a pint, but having a chat.
Podcast. I mean, that's a good name for a podcast.
I would host that with you, but tragically our travel means that maybe we're not able to do it as well. Be like chicken shop date, but booze.
That's another great. Oh, the ideas that I want to go back and.
I know.
The pipette.
The pipette. I'm really excited about this. I can't wait to see what happens.
Well, thanks. I can't wait to taste the 6-year-old.
Yes.
Not today, obviously, but I look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm so delighted. But yeah, this feels very professional now at the end, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do.
This is where you just fade it out.
I know. It's like. Everyone look away.
Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Whisky Sounds Good.